Welcome everybody to QB Power Hour. Today's May the 3rd, and today's episode is recurring invoices in QuickBooks Desktop plus Recur360. The agenda for today will speak briefly about QB Power Hour. It sponsors the host. We'll talk about the CPE process, and then we'll deep dive into doing some recurring invoices inside QuickBooks Desktop. You learn how to create them, how to manage them, how to email them, that sort of thing. And you understand the options and limitations that QuickBooks Desktop has when it has to do specifically with the recurring and automation elements of invoicing. And then you will learn how the app Recur360 for QuickBooks helps with the process of managing recurring revenues. About QB Power Hour, we are a webinar series, usually twice a month, Thursdays at 12 p.m. Eastern. Today's episode it's on May 3rd, and the next episode will be May 17th. We'll have a similar topic. We'll talk about some of invoice managing features in QuickBooks Online, and we will have talk a little bit about recurring invoicing, and we will have another app that also does invoice management called Invoice Sherpa, which is very different than Recur360. So it's really nice to have them back to back, so you can see the differences of two app developers that kind of solve the AR issue, the invoicing issue, in quite different approaches. We typically cover tips and tricks, QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Desktop. From time to time, we'll bring in a third-party developer, or we'll talk about practice management, small business accounting, industry-related type of topics. So that's more or less what we end up covering in these webinars. Michel Long is my co-host. She's not with us today. She's actually traveling and doing some training. And she's the owner of for Success. She's a co-host of QB Power Hour, also co-host of the Accounting Beacon. I'll talk about that towards the end of the webinar. Author of multiple books. They are in Amazon if you want to check them out. About myself, my name is Hector Garcia. I'm a practicing accountant from Miami, Florida. I practice from my office here in Miami, Florida. Ex-member or graduating member of the Accounting Council and Advanced QuickBooks Pro Advisor. There's my email. There's my Twitter handle if you need to ask me a question or communicate with me in any way. We'd like to thank our sponsors. TSheets, they're a premium sponsor for us, a platinum sponsor, #1 rated app in apps.com. Create, manage, and approve timesheets from any device. Set up a free account for you as an accounting professional by going into tsheets.com/pros. IArrow Workflow, another one of our platinum sponsors. That's the only workflow manager that is created by a QuickBooks Pro Advisor thinking about the practice of accountants and pro advisors, and it's fully integrated with QuickBooks Online. Check them out at IArrowWorkflow.com. And Hotdog, the most popular document aggregator for QuickBooks Power users. Very popular, very powerful document management tool, and it's great to automatically fetch or receive bills through their system. You get a free account as an accounting professional. Check them out at hotdog.com/QB Power Hour to get your free account for your own practice. And the episode sponsor is Recur360. They're going to do a demo towards the second half of the webinar. They help you automate recurring revenue tasks for QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online. Their website is recur360.com. Also, congratulations. They were top 10 on the contest, on the developer contest, a small business app showdown that just happened in San Jose, California at the QuickBooks Connect conference. And this is where they caught our eye. And I was talking to one of the owners or founders of Recur360, which happens to be a colleague, happens to be a pro advisor, an IRP, a QuickBooks reseller. So she and her team really, really understand this type of stuff that we go through, and they developed a great solution for that. About CPE, if you are an accounting professional, you will a CPA, a certified bookkeeper that requires CPEs, you will get an email certificate of the attendance. We'll ask 4 questions during the webinar. You only need to answer 3. As long as you're logged in the live webinar for 50 minutes or more, and you answer 3 of the questions, there's no right or wrong answer, just answer them. You will get an email certificate within 3 to 4 weeks. And this episode is not approved for ACE. All right, so let's jump right into the topic. I'm going to cover these 5 topics: memorize invoices, income tracker, email invoices in batch invoicing, and batch enter invoicing. These are the options that we have in QuickBooks Desktop when it comes to quote unquote automating or recurring invoices. And I say that with air quotes because unfortunately, in QuickBooks Desktop, you really don't have much automation tools per se when it comes to invoicing or recurring revenues. So there's semi-automation tools. Of course, one of them is create the invoices in batch and then hit a button to actually email them, or you have to use some other system to actually collect the payment. So there's not much automation per se. I would say I venture to say that the automation is not really the best way to show call this. Okay, because it's not really automation, but it is something that's worth looking at for sure. Okay, so let's jump into QuickBooks. Okay, and let's start with memorizing invoices. So we're gonna start this pretty simple. So we're gonna talk about how we create recurring invoices, and there's many situations in which we would have to do recurring invoices. One is we have a contract with our client, and maybe we want to invoice them automatically. In some other cases, maybe we have some sort of subscription with our customers, so we have to invoice them automatically. In QuickBooks, you cannot automate the payment portion. You can automate the invoicing portion, but you cannot automate the payment portion. So that's something that we still have to manually process or collect with a third-party app of some sort. But not every company does automation of payments. They do automation of invoices, but not automation of payments. And this is big contrast between QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online, because QuickBooks Online does allow you to automate payments. So I don't want to confuse you two. We're talking about automating the invoicing, not automating the payment. Okay, so let me create the first invoice here. I'm going to hit Control I on my keyboard so we can see the invoice. I'm going to select one of my customers, whichever one happens to be. Of course, I'm working on a sample file. So I'm going to select this customer here. And then I'm going to go ahead and create an invoice. Now, let's assume, for example, that we're charging these people rent. Okay, one of the very common things that we do with recurring invoices is rent, because rent is pretty predictable. It's pretty much the same thing over and over. So we're going to go ahead and create an item real quick and send this to rental income. Okay, so I'm going to create an income account called rental income, and I'm going to create an item called rent, which is the one that we're going to use to create our invoices. So I'm going to go ahead and select the item called rent. I'm going to go ahead and put in the description monthly rent, something simple like that, monthly rent, and then I'm going to put the dollar amount, let's say it's $1,500. Okay, so I simply created an invoice for rent for $1,500. That's it. I'm going to go ahead and click on save. Okay, I'm going to select this to be May 1st. So let's say that's the first month that we're doing rent for. So May 1st, okay, that's what we're doing. And we're gonna go ahead and click on save. And then what I'm gonna do is on the terms, I'm gonna create terms for 4 days. And the reason why I do that is because most rental businesses actually give a grace period of 3 to 4 to 5 days to the tenant before they actually charge a fee. So I'm gonna actually create the terms for 4 days. So I'm gonna put net 5th, okay, but I'm gonna make it 4 days because of course we have the day of the invoice plus 4 more days, so they give people until the 5th per se to grace period to pay. So we're gonna go ahead and click on OK, and that would be my 4-day terms, which I'm calling it net 5th, the 5th of the month, and I'm gonna hit save again and done. So that's my first invoice with the correct terms and the due date and the correct item and all that stuff. So in order to create recurring revenue or recurring invoice, I'm going to go ahead and click on memorize. There's a little icon up here that says memorize. Okay, so I'm going to click on that icon there. I could also hit Control M on the keyboard and it gets me to the same screen. So I clicked on memorize or Control M, and then in here on the name I can just call it the same name of the customer. That's the most typical thing. So that's the name of the customer. And then we're going to choose here how we're going to create that recurring income. So we have a couple of options. We have add to reminders list, and this is simply so you can have a report of clients that you need to invoice, and that's really not recurring, that's just reminding. There's don't remind me, which means it won't even show up in the reminders. It will be a template. So the second one is a template to create a recurring invoice. The first one is a template to create a recurring invoice plus a reminder. So I got two different things. The third one is the most obvious one, which is automate transaction entry, which basically means that you're going to create it automatically in QuickBooks. So we're going to select that one, automate a transaction entry. And the big question is how often? Okay, so in this case, it would be monthly, okay, because this is a rental contract. And of course, depending on the situation, this could be different. The next date, okay, I just did May 1st, right? So the invoice that I just saved, and that's really important. The invoice I just saved is May 1st. So the next one obviously needs to now be June 1st, right? So it follows the continuity. So I'm going to select here June 1st, and that's how you create the next one in the sequence. The number remaining, this is a really important one. So you have a couple of choices here. You can either put nothing here, which means it's unlimited. That means it will never end. That means that this recurring invoice will be created forever until I delete it or I stop it. And days in advance to enter is how many days before the due date. So how many days before the due date you want this invoice to show up in my accounts receivable report. Now, why that matters is because maybe, and it's very common, we're going to email this to our customer way before the invoice date. So although the invoice is dated May 1st, we'll probably email this April 20th. Why? Because we want to give the client 10 days to organize their finances and pay us. So one of the mistakes that people make is they invoice it on 4/20, but they put on it that is due on the 1st. And then when the customer is trying to reconcile their accounts payable or whatever, they think that that's an invoice that belongs to April because of the actual date of the invoice. So what you really want to make sure is that the date of the invoice matches the date of the service being provided, and then you use the days in advance to enter so you can send them preemptively before that date. So I typically put 10 here. There's no magic number. I typically put 10 there. Now, number remaining, that's valuable if you want the system to stop creating invoices as possibly a reminder that we may need to wait until this contract renews, or the dollar amount could change. So if we're ever dealing with a situation where we have a contract and a dollar amount could change, we want to maybe limit these to 11, right? Because we already created one, and then we have 12 left on our 11 left on our 12-month contract. So by doing that, for a fact that when that invoice stops, you probably need to revise your contract or whatever, and then modify the next invoice and then create the next recurring 11. That's actually a very typical case that we had. So we go ahead and hit OK, and that will do it. So once I click Save and Close, I can now click on the List menu, and I can click on Memorize Transaction List. And I'm going to maximize this screen for a second. I have a couple of here because it's a sample file, so I'm just going to delete them, make it a little bit easier for you to see it. So I'm going to delete everything that was there from the sample file. That way we only have the one that we're working on right now. So there was some already created there. There you go. So we only have one left. Now you will notice that up here on the right, it says here Auto. Auto means that it's going to automatically be created. And actually, there's a caveat to that. It's not going to automatically be created. It's going to automatically prompt you to automatically create it. It gets a little tricky. And then it says, when is the due date? Now, what you don't get on this screen is days in advance to enter. That's not something that you get on the screen. If you click on Customize Columns, you actually would have to bring in that information in the available column. So if I want to see days in advance to enter, or I want to see number remaining, I can actually simply enable that by clicking on Customize Columns and then adding it to the list. So if I add those two and hit OK, then we get that information in here. So that's a little bit more powerful, a little bit more useful, of course, because if you have a long list of rental income tenants in there, or whatever the situation may be, you can actually see that if number remaining is 0, that possibly means that the contract is up. That's another piece of valuable information. Although there are arguably better ways to track, the renewal dates of these contracts. But in terms of working with memorized transactions, that's possibly the best option. And then what I'll do is one more time, I'll go back for a second here. I'm going to go back here to memorize transaction list, and I'm going to change for a second. I'm going to go ahead and edit it. I'm going to change, and I'm going to put enter it 30 days in advance. So I just want to show you something because I do want that June 1 to be triggered just so I can illustrate how this works. So in order to trigger memorized transactions, there actually isn't a button that you press. It would be nice for you to press a button here and say, trigger all my memorized transactions, right? So you can do it. You can manually trigger one if you want, simply by clicking on it. And you can right click and click on enter. So that's one way that you can trigger it. So you can manually trigger it that way. But if you want the system to automatically trigger it, you actually have to log out. So I'm going to log out completely. And then you have to log back in. Now, before I log in, let me run another polling question. Gives me a chance to allow my QuickBooks to kind of do the login process. So there's the second polling question of the 4 that we're about to ask. So if you don't mind, if you need your CPE certificates, make sure that you answer that polling question, please. Okay, and then while the polling question is up, I'll try to see if there are any questions here in the questions box that I could answer. Let's see. Okay, somebody says, how do I automate QuickBooks to automatically draw funds from our client's account? So yeah, so QuickBooks in itself cannot do that. I mean, we can automate the invoicing, but you would have to use a third-party tool, or you have to log in into the merchant services of QuickBooks Payments to be able to achieve that. So it's not something that QuickBooks has. Automating the payments themselves is something that QuickBooks doesn't have. Okay, let's see. So the last answer of the polling question, it just means that the question really meant to say, I use QuickBooks Online, I don't use QuickBooks Desktop at all. So the last option means I don't use QuickBooks Desktop at all. I apologize for that. So I'll understand contextually what that means. So, okay, so we have about a 92% of the votes. Again, please answer the polling question if you need your CPE certificates. Somebody says, if there's a 12-month contract, why would the number remaining would be 11 and not 10? No, I would say it's 11 because I just entered 1, right? So I just entered 1 and then I was automating the other 11. Not sure really what you meant by that. Also is, can these invoices be automatically emailed to our client? Okay, let's see. Good. All right. So perfect. So let's go ahead and close the polling question. And let's talk about emailing them. Right. So before we ran the polling question, I went ahead and closed QuickBooks and opened it back up. When you open QuickBooks back up, you get this pop-up screen that says enter memorized transactions. That is the automation feature of QuickBooks Desktop. It basically comes in and tells you all the ones that are pending in that memorized transaction list, pending to be created. Okay. So let me go ahead and click on enter check now. So that enter check now button is the one that allows you to actually push and create that invoice into the book. So I'm going to click on enter check now. And it tells you here that it automatically created 1 transaction. I'll go ahead and hit OK. Okay, when I go into my list and memorize transaction list, I can actually see that this transaction, the next one that needs to be entered is going to be July 1st. So you can clearly tell that it was created up to June. July 1st is the one created, and it tells you right here that the number remaining is 10. Number remaining is 10 because we created May and June, and then we have the rest of the months left. Now, when we create that invoice, so let me go back to that invoice real quick, and that was, I believe it was this customer here. Perfect. You go back and pull the invoice for 1,500. When we created that invoice, one of the opportunities that I missed is to check this question, this little checkbox up here, which is email later. Okay, if I don't click on email later, I am not going to be prompted to send that invoice to that client. In other words, I'm automating the process of creating the invoices, but I'm not automating the process of communicating that invoice to that client. Now, in different industries, you may not need to send an invoice to a client. Some clients just know what they owe you. They know it innately. It's on an email, it's in some other system, and they don't need to literally receive an invoice from you in order for them to pay you. This is actually very relevant in the rental world. A lot of folks just don't get an invoice for rental. They just pay it because they know they have to pay it, right? So it's not something that you have to do. But if you wanted to automate the email process, and I'm going to do automate in air quotes, you would have to have marked email later, okay? And then when you actually memorized it, so in this case, you have to click on memorize, you would click on replace, right? Because I memorized it without the check later, so I have to rememorize it and letting it know that I do want that invoice to be automatically checked with the email later. So I'm overwriting the invoice just to have that checkbox in it. Because once you have that checkbox in there on the email later, then it will prompt you in the emails place. There's a place where you do that to actually send those emails in bulk. So let me go ahead and duplicate this invoice. I'm going to go ahead and just right click anywhere in the invoice and duplicate it. I'm going to do another one for another customer. So I'm going to duplicate the invoice and I'll select, let me put an email here. Let's do stern@gmail.com. And let me go ahead and select a different customer. Let's select here Thompson. And let's say their rent is $1,800. And let's see, this is going to be for May. Save that. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and click on memorize, automate, monthly, just doing everything over again here. So just having 2 on the list. Number remaining 11, days in advance to enter 10. Click on save. There we go. So now we got 2 invoices I created with the email later checkbox. So the way we email our clients in bulk, and I'll show you, is by clicking on the file menu, then clicking on send forms. Okay. And then every single email that has that email later checkbox will be here. Now the caveat is if your client doesn't have an email set up in their settings, it won't show. So that Thomson Lighting one doesn't have an email set up in their settings. That way it doesn't even show up in here. So let me go back and click on customers and go to customer center. Let me look for Thomson. Let me edit the customer and let me put an email in their system here. So let's put Thomson@yahoo.com, whatever the email happens to be. Once I load a default email in there, let me go back into the invoice and let me make sure that I also click on email later and click on save and close. And now I can actually email both of these in one shot. So I'm going to click on file, send forms. They both are going to show up in here now, right? Because they're both marked to be emailed later and they both have an email address in their settings. Select both of them. You can actually preview each of them if you want to. You can change the text if you want to. And then you just click on send now on the bottom here and it will send both of those emails automatically. So when recurring invoicing in QuickBooks Online and automating revenue, it's not really automation. And sorry, in QuickBooks Desktop, I meant to say, it's not really automation because you do have to hit certain buttons. I mean, this still beats saving one and adding it to an email or emailing one by one. Doing them in batch like this sure beats that, okay? But it is not automation in any way, shape, or form. So you're going to see when Recur360 comes in and they do their demo, you're going to see what is it exactly that they solve for. Now I want to cover one more thing pertaining to this, which is the income tracker. So I'm going to go to I'm going to go back into File, Send Forms, and nothing is there. And the reason why nothing is there is because nothing is marked to be emailed later. That's the only problem that QuickBooks has, is that if you don't mark it to be emailed later, it won't show up on the screen. But there's a little tiny workaround, which is we go to Company, and then we go to Income Tracker. In Customers, and then we go to Income Tracker. Where are you? There we go. So we're going to go to Customers. We're going to go to Income Tracker. And we're going to select, any of the open invoices that we want. So let's say, for example, I'm going to go ahead and filter this and only show invoices. And I'm going to filter this and only show open invoices. And let's say that I wanted to email these two, okay? But I can't do it. Or let's just choose 3, whatever, 4, whatever happens to be. So I want to email all these in bulk, but they are not currently marked to be emailed later. So I can't do it from the send form screen. But this little box down here that says batch actions in the bottom left, if I select multiple of them in there, I can click on that and then click on where it says batch email. Okay, this one that says invoices, actually, it's a print button. I don't understand why it just says invoices, but that's a print button, and this was a batch email. So if I click on that one, it will actually tell me, hey, wait a second, these people don't have email. So let me just make sure that I put their emails in there. Now these people are going to be freaked out when they get these emails because I'm actually sending them. So hopefully they don't put me in the spam list. And I'll click on OK. And then this screen pops up, which is pretty much the same as the other screen, but the existential difference is that these were prompted from the income tracker, and these were not on an email later checkbox. So you actually have the full flexibility to send emails of open invoices via the income trackers. That's also a really important piece. Okay, and you can change the text that is going to show up in here. Now, a question that I get often is, hey, how do I change the text that goes in those emails? Okay, so that's going to be in the edit menu under preferences. That's going to be under send forms. Okay, right there under send forms. And that's going to be under company preferences. And then here's the delivery method. So we're going to select email. And then we're going to select which template it is. So is it the invoices template? Is it the estimates template? Whichever one happens to be. We pick a template here. And there's always a default template in there. So what we can do is we can click on add template. And we can call this one angry collections letter. Okay. And then we can say past due invoice, right? So we're starting with the word past due in there. And then we can say here, this is past due. If we don't receive response, whatever happens to be, within 20 days, we will send to collections, right? Whatever happens to be. So that's going to be my angry letter collections letter. And then I'll click OK. Then I'm going to go into my open invoices and I'm going to pick, like, let's say my oldest invoices. Let's say these 4 here are my older invoices. Then I'm going to click on batch actions, batch email. Okay, and then all I have to do is at this point, the only problem is with this screen is you can't pick a template. So that's actually my fault for leading you this way. But you can't pick a template here. You actually have to go into each one manually and click email if you want to change the template. So I apologize for leading you that way. But the template can only be done in the one-to-one email, not on the batch. Not on the batch email. However, let me experiment something. I'll click on email later on this one. And let's see if it comes in on this screen. So if I go to send forms. Okay, so if you use the send forms screen, like something I discovered on the fly here, if you click on send form screen because you clicked on email later, then you can change your templates. And if you do one by one, you can change your template. But if you go through income tracker, you can't change your templates, which, by the way, something I should let the development team know right away because that makes sense that should be like that. Okay. All right. So we covered memorized invoices. We covered invoice tracker. We covered email, invoices, and batch. Let me cover batch enter invoices. I'll skip batch invoicing because we do have another QB Power Hour episode on that. So on the email recording, I'll send everyone a link to that recording because batch invoicing is a very interesting piece of it, and I don't want to budget in 2 or 3 minutes that we have left here for this presentation. So I'll do batch enter invoices real quick just to kind of show you an example. So what I'll do real quick, just to have some data ready to go, I'm going to pull up a report that contains just invoices for a second, just to show you one of the ways that we actually have some of my clients do this. So I'm just going to pull a quick report here, and the way I pull that report is not really that important. I'm just trying to get some data in an Excel spreadsheet real quick. So I'm going to export this into Excel, and I'm gonna export to an Excel spreadsheet under the premise that maybe the way or the approach in which you handle recurring invoices will be done in Excel. I have many clients that's how they do it. They have a big Excel spreadsheet. They prefer to use Excel. I mean, I don't want to get into the reasons, the details, or why and how. This is something that they value, doing it in Excel first. I mean, everybody has their own reasons. But if you're gonna manage recurring invoices in Excel, which is actually very feasible, what you're gonna do is you're gonna have, assuming that you're gonna have some sort of spreadsheet, right, with the information. We're gonna have all we really need is a column for a date. Okay, we don't need a number. We can allow QuickBooks to automatically create a number. We need the customer's name. We actually are gonna need the dollar amount, and really that's it. So if you happen to have a spreadsheet, right, that contains a whole bunch of, I'm going to delete everything that's there. So if you happen to have a spreadsheet that contains a whole bunch of invoices that you want to create in one shot, all you really need is the date, the name, and the amount. And technically, you don't even need the date because you can actually enter that in there as well. So I'm going to delete that as well. So all you really need is the dollar amount and the customer's names. That's it. So if you were using the spreadsheet model, what you would do is you would go into accountant, you would go into batch enter transactions, then you would select invoices and credit memos. You select the accounts receivable account if you happen to have multiple. Then what you're going to do is you're going to click on customize columns, and you're going to organize these columns to look exactly like your spreadsheet. So we're going to see name number 1. I'll put name number 1, and then we'll put amount number 2. And then we're definitely going to need a date. We're definitely going to need a number. We're definitely going to need a terms. Description, let's say we don't need that. The item is necessary. Quantity we don't need. Rate we don't need. And total is going to be there by default. So these are really the columns that you need. The customer's name, total amount, the date, the number, the terms of the item. Although I don't have them on my spreadsheet, we're going to do that in an automated way. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Then I'm going to go back into my spreadsheet. I'm going to copy and paste the information that's on my spreadsheet. Again, some sort of spreadsheet in which we manage our monthly recurring invoicing. We're going to right click here and click on paste. Automatically, QuickBooks will enter the customer's name. It will enter the amount. It will enter the date, the last date you use. So for example, let's say that happens to be right. If it's different, I'll put 06/01/2018. I'll just right click on it and click on copy down if I want that date to copy down, assuming that date didn't come in. We can allow the number to be automatically generated. That's perfect. The terms, we can also select whatever term we want and right click and copy down. Okay, we can do that. And then the item, we will pick here our rent item or whichever item it's going to happen, and we can right click and copy down. Now, the right click copy down, I'm only doing it because I didn't paste it from the spreadsheet originally. But in my experience, people they're not really good at keeping up their spreadsheets. As long as they have the customer's name and the total amount, we're all good. And the only limitation you have with this is you can't enter multiple items. If you need multiple items, you're going to have to use the memorize route. And then we click on save transactions, and it will save them. One quick thing, under customize columns, there's a little checkbox here. This is the one that most people forget here, to be emailed. Remember, we want to be able to match them. So we want to bring that in to be emailed and bring that in. And then once we bring that field in, what we can do is we can hit the checkbox on that, and we can right click and copy down. That way they're all marked to be emailed. That's the key. Very important. That's the key. So we'll click on save transactions, save, and boom, you're going to have all 10, 20, 50, whatever happens to be emails. Now, remember, you have to have email addresses on these customers set up in order to be able to save them. So this customer in particular doesn't have an email address. So let me go and edit that real quick. And I'll put the email baker@gmail.com. Go back into my batch enter, click save, and it should allow me to bring that one in and give me an error on the other two. So that's a perfect illustration of what would also happen if your email is not in there. Now, you actually don't have, it's one of the limitations, you actually don't have a way to bring that email in. So that email has to be brought in into the items, into the customer name database from the get-go. All right, good. So let's go into Recur360. Let me go ahead and give the capacity to share the screen to Andrew. So Andrew, are you on? Let's just make sure that we can hear you.
Yes, I'm here. Thanks, Hector.
Perfect, Andrew. Thank you very much. So go ahead and share your screen. Let me give you presenter mode. And I would love for you to start by sort of addressing, if you look at the presentation I gave, address specifically what the limitations of QuickBooks are and how your software helps, and then jump into the product demo because that would be a great segue.
Will do. Thanks. So think of Recur360 as an advanced automated recurring invoicing, payments, and collections solution. So in QuickBooks Desktop, everything that you do, one, requires you to be in QuickBooks Desktop. So if you don't log in, nothing gets entered as far as a memorized transaction goes. So because we're web-based, everything gets automated at the web level, whether you log into QuickBooks or not. So the purpose of Recur360 is to do a couple things. It's to replace memorized invoices and also replace memorized credit card processing within Intuit Payments within QuickBooks and consolidate them into a single transaction within Recur360. And then also automate out emailing of those transactions when they process. So where Hector showed you in send forms, it only sends out the ones that are checked to be emailed. It also only sends them once, and it only sends them if you log into QuickBooks and go into the send forms function. And once these are sent out, it doesn't send them again. So Recur360 also automates sending and resending of any emails of invoices that haven't been paid. So if you think about it, rather than setting up memorized transactions in QuickBooks, recurring payments in QuickBooks, or in QuickBooks Online sales receipts, you can connect Recur360 to either version of QuickBooks and set up all of your recurring invoices with payments, or recurring payments from within there. So this is just a little graphic of what we do. We have some key features that you can't do in either version of QuickBooks. We allow you to prorate initial invoices and choose which items are prorated. We allow you to split the invoice date from the payment date, so you can run the invoice on the 1st and the payment 5 days later. We allow you to create recurring payments against open invoices or come in as unapplied payments. We automate the collection emails. Our Pay Online link allows you to pay all of your open invoices, not just the one invoice emailed to you through Intuit Payments. And if you don't use Intuit Payments, you don't get any of those capabilities in QuickBooks Desktop related to automating your payments, or QuickBooks Online for that matter. So we are an external payment gateway where you can use Recur360 payments or an alternate payment processor like Authorize.net or Elavon. For QuickBooks Online, recurring transactions are sales receipts, not invoices and received payments. And if a sales receipt fails in QBO, then the transaction is just in limbo. And you can't filter the collection center within QBO. So to go into what our product does, I'm going to go ahead and log in. And so the first thing is when you sign up for Recur360, you can create your own email address or sign in with Intuit. I'm going to go ahead and sign in with my Intuit ID, which then allows me to manage multiple clients if you're an accountant, or multiple properties if you're a rental property manager. So I can have all of my separate Recur360 accounts listed here, tied to separate QuickBooks files, whether they're online or desktop. I'm going to go into our desktop file. And instead of memorized transactions, we have recurring invoices. And within a recurring invoice, you set up all of the parameters related to when you want it to run, how frequently, start date, end date, things like that. But also within the invoice, you attach it to payment method. So if you store their payment method in the system, which our system allows you to do, or you send a link to the customer to have it stored in there. And we can store multiple payment methods. So in the case of a property manager, they may have different accounts for different properties, they can have different pay cards or bank accounts listed. So you would define that within the transaction. Now in QuickBooks Desktop, the recurring payments are in a separate module from the memorized invoices. In ours, it's all within the same. And then you could process the payment on the same date as the invoice, or you can say process it a day or later or 2 days later, which is not a feature within recurring memorized transactions in QuickBooks Desktop. You can say to automatically send the invoice with payment emails. So again, you don't have that automation in QuickBooks Desktop. And then we also allow you to set up your overdue notifications. So you can say send this every X days until you get paid, starting Y days after the due date. So in QuickBooks Desktop, when you click send forms, it sends it once, sends it one time, and it's done again, unless you go back to the invoice or the collection center and say to resend it again. But it doesn't allow you to automatically schedule those emails based on how you want them to go out and when. So we add that collection functionality to the invoice emails should they have an overdue balance on a recurring invoice. And then prorating you can't do within QuickBooks Desktop or online. So if you look at the items that I have down here below, I have a monthly fee for hosting, I have an initial setup fee, and I've said don't prorate the setup fee, but prorate the monthly fee. And so how that works is I'm going to start running this on May 2nd, but I want it to run on the 1st of every month subsequent to this. So it's going to recalculate that balance based on the proration of basically 1 day less in the month for the initial invoice. So we give you proration, we give you scheduled collection emails, and we give you automated payments all within a single transaction. Where in QuickBooks Desktop, as Hector showed you, you had to go into different modules to configure different things. So I'm just going to go ahead and submit this. So in addition to the recurring invoices with a payment, we also allow you to create recurring payments on their own. And a recurring payment, think of that as either a payment plan. So I can select a customer, I can select an open invoice, and I can come up with a payment plan against their open invoice for them to pay me weekly every Monday. And I'm backdating it to this past Monday so we can see a couple of these transactions push through. And it will process this every week on a Monday for $125 until we're done getting paid, until it's paid in full. And every time it processes, it's going to email the customer automatically the payment as well as the balance due remainder on the invoice, which again, you don't get in QuickBooks. It doesn't automate the emailing. You can't set a recurring payment inside of QuickBooks against an open invoice and then automatically email out a balance due on that invoice. Now, another thing that we have in our system is recurring payments that aren't applied to an invoice, but just go in as unapplied payments. So for this particular one, let's say I'm a bookkeeper and I do bookkeeping every Tuesday, I can have this automatically just charge them $100. And then in my QuickBooks, when I bring my time in from TSheets or enter it directly into the timesheets in QuickBooks and pull it onto an invoice, then this will be sitting there as an unapplied payment, which you can't create recurring unapplied payments in QuickBooks Desktop because there's no capability of memorizing them. So we give you recurring payments as payment plans against an open invoice until it's paid, or just recurring payments that you want to flow in as unapplied receipt payments. Within our collection center, you can choose all of your open invoices that you want, or choose specific invoices, and you can sort by date or amount or by customer. So I'm just going to sort by customer here. And I'm going to say, for Andrew Abrams here, I want to schedule these collection emails to go out. And where in QuickBooks, it just puts it into send forms. It doesn't allow you to schedule later. Well, in our system, you can say schedule this later, and I can say schedule this to go out on a specific date. So let's say I want this to go out on Saturday, it'll then put it into our send queue and automatically send that on Saturday. But what I can also do is say, send this, 2 days after the due date, if I haven't been paid by the due date, or I can say, send this every 5 days, starting 1 day after the due date, and then our system will automatically send those. So I'm going to click schedule email here, and that's going to put that into our send log. So another thing that we have within our reporting is scheduled payments, your scheduled emails. So this will show you emails that have already gone out, but then also the pending emails. So those were the two that I just created. So it shows you a log of when those emails are going to be sent, and then if you wanted to cancel it, you can cancel it here. Now, if they pay you prior to this going out, then this won't be sent at all. So again, there's no scheduling of emails in the future or based on it being paid in full inside of QuickBooks Desktop or online. So I've set up these recurring invoices, I've set up the recurring payments, and I've set up these collection emails. So these are already triggered. In QuickBooks Desktop, the way that Hector showed you, you had to actually log out of the program and log back in for it to prompt you to send those if you wanted to schedule them to be sent today. Well, in Recur360, you can just simply click push transactions. And so what this is doing right now is it's generating these invoices, generating any payments attached to the invoices, generating any of the recurring payments against open invoices or as payments on their own, and it's automatically emailing those transactions to the customer. And when it's done pushing those, they're going to show up in our sync log here. And what this is this is what's queued to sync into QuickBooks Desktop. So within QuickBooks Desktop, we sync via the QuickBooks Web Connector. So there's no additional software to install when using QuickBooks Desktop. With QuickBooks Online, we integrate directly with their API. And so this runs every 30 minutes. So when you open up QuickBooks on the desktop that it's set on and you just click Update Web Services, then the Web Connector will run every 30 minutes. I'm just going to tell it to update now so that I can see those invoices flow in here. And when they flow in based on the date that you sent them to start. And then the payments will flow in based on either today or the X amount of days after the invoice date that you had it set it to run. So if I go ahead and look at a payment, it will come in for the unapplied payments simply as unapplied. That was that $100 one that I showed you. For the ones that come in applied, they will come in automatically applied to the invoice that you had it set to apply to within the recurring payments module. So if you're using Intuit Payments in QuickBooks Desktop, it will record a payment, but it'll ask you who the customer is and what invoice you want to apply it to. Well, within our system, when it posts in, it automatically applies it to that invoice. So it, again, automates it. You don't have to choose what you want it to do. For any transactions that are processed through Intuit Payments, it brings it in with the metadata, so it acts just like it was processed within QuickBooks, and that allows you to make your batch deposits similar as you do today. Again, you can use Intuit Payments, you could use us as a payment processor, or you could use Authorize.net or USAE Pay. We're agnostic, but we still give you all of those capabilities. And when invoices come in, they come in as if you had created them within QuickBooks to begin with, just like memorizing them, except our program automates the creation and then the entry into QuickBooks. So as you can see here, this was that first transaction that I prorated. So the setup fee was $45, but then it prorated the monthly. It charged tax and it brought it in for the $93.51. So again, you don't get the, yes.
Sorry, okay, let me run a polling question because we have the polling question constraints for the CPE. And then while the polling question is up, there's actually a plethora of questions here about your system. So I'm going to see how many I can quick fire in 2 minutes. Okay. So one of them says you can have both a credit card and a customer's bank account in the profile, and the customer can choose how they want to pay, correct?
Correct.
Okay. If If the customer doesn't choose, but we, the service provider, chooses, we are the ones that tell it, okay, charge from this account, not that account, correct?
Correct.
Okay, somebody's asking a really strange one. If the credit card declines, will it automatically try to charge with the bank account? That's a pretty interesting question.
We don't have it set to do that. So currently, no. The reason behind that is you pay fees every time you try to process, even if it doesn't process. So rather than racking up fees, we just send a payment failed invoice to the customer where they can then update their payment information without you incurring additional fees.
Makes sense. What's the fee for using ACH payments?
Well, if you're using Intuit payments, they charge $1 for ACH. If you use Recur360 payments, we charge 45 cents in ACH.
Okay, so you have your own processing option if people don't have their own merchant account. And if they have their own merchant account with QuickBooks, they can integrate it and it will all run through the QuickBooks merchant. You will not be involved in the monetary portion at all.
Correct, nor do we charge any additional fees to allow you to do that.
Okay, invoice creation, does it have to be done in Recur360 or can it be done in QuickBooks Desktop?
You can do both. The purpose of ours is to automate the recurring invoice creation. But if you manually create invoices in QuickBooks Desktop, they will sync into Recur, and then you can send them out through Recur with our Pay Online link, which again allows them to pay for multiple invoices, either through Intuit Payments or through whatever processor they choose.
So if you use Recur360 as an invoice emailing reminder tool and customer portal tool where the customer can choose how to pay and pay on the fly whenever they want, then you could create the invoice in QuickBooks Desktop. But if you want to use the automating payment tools within Recur360, where you can set the credit card or the bank account to automatically charge the client and then email them the receipt, then you would put it in Recur360. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm gonna let you be, and then about 2 minutes before the top of the hour, I'll stop you again for the last polling question. And if you want to stay within, a couple minutes extra to do Q&A, we can do that. So I'm gonna give you a couple minutes to do the rest of your presentation, and I have to do the last polling question before the top of the hour.
Sure. So what I haven't showed you yet is the email that the customer gets. So they will receive an Uber-like email that comes into their Outlook or their mobile phone that allows them to see what the invoice was. It shows how it was paid, what our transaction ID is. If they've got an account number to reference, it would have that. And then they also get an attached PDF, which is a very vanilla invoice, similar to a QuickBooks Online or the standard QuickBooks Desktop invoice that allows them to print this and file it away. Or if they owe you money, they could put this in the in an envelope with a check and mail that to you. So they get a copy of this. You can set yourself to get a copy of this. And so these are just different kinds of emails that our system automatically sends out. And then this was that payment plan email. So it's not sending them an invoice, but it is sending them, say, this is your weekly payment plan for 125, and then now here's your new balance due. So this is part of the automation that we're giving you. And again, they could then click on this link and they could choose to pay off that invoice that now has a balance of $850 along with any of their other invoices. With our Pay Online link, it will automatically store the payment method unless they choose to unselect this. And so they could say, you know what, I want to pay that off, but I want to, if you allow ACH, I want to pay that off with my bank account. So when they enter this, it will store it to the account if that's checked for future transactions. It'll automate any future recurring transactions to use this payment method, and then it'll automatically pay off these invoices, post the payments to QuickBooks against those invoices, and email them that that invoice has been paid automatically. And then if they're using authorize.net, it will automatically send them an email transcript if you have it set to do that. So again, these are a lot of the automations that you simply just don't get in QuickBooks Desktop or online.
Could you show us? Can you show us a feature that I really liked, which is the place that it tells you all the expiring credit cards?
Yes.
You can manage that process.
Yes. So within our reports, something you don't get in QuickBooks Desktop or online is when are cards expiring. So I'm going to say, show me anything that's expiring before 2023. So these all expire on January of 2020. So let's say that that was next month. I could click on these and I could say, send them an email that their card's expiring. So I'm going to do send now, and that's going to queue it within our reporting. So within our email history, I'm going to see that that went out as a card expiring email. And then in the email that they're going to get, it's simply going to say your credit card's expiring, and then go ahead and click here to update your payment information. So they can update their payment information and pay open invoices, or they can simply just update the payment information, even if they don't have open invoices, and it will overwrite their account with their new payment information, so that by the time the next recurring runs, it uses the updated credit card based on what they inputted based on this card expiration email.
Seems to me, Andrew, that one of the biggest, most valuable things that your app has is, getting rid of this whole hand-holding process of babysitting clients to get payments, get them to pay.
Correct.
You give them the portal, give them the access, and it makes your company feel like a much bigger company, right? You have a portal to deal with your invoicing.
Exactly. You're like Verizon or your cable company where they're just automatically charging you and invoicing you every month. Where QuickBooks typically is, I just did work for you, I'm going to email you an invoice, you can click on the invoice and pay me. This is really to automate your business when you have recurring, that you're creating the invoice and getting paid up front, and you're controlling that, or at least giving the customer the capability of paying you and then automating the future ones, so that you're not waiting to get paid. We want you to get paid now when you set these things up. So we're really creating that automation. And the big piece of the automation is you can have your staff go into Recur360 and set all of this up, and they don't have to be in your QuickBooks. So you're separating your accounting from your recurring sales, or even your collections. Where in QuickBooks, if you go into the memorized transaction list, somebody would see all of your memorized transactions, not just your invoices. So within here, we're keeping your sales or your collection staff out of QuickBooks and only living within what's AR or revenue producing, and not anything related to payroll, paying bills, journal entries, bank transfers, or any of those kind of things.
Okay, Andrew,
so we're giving them the tools to manage all this.
I have to run the last polling question, if you don't mind. Stay on for a little bit because there's a lot of questions here. So I know some people have to leave at top of the hour. So I'm going to run the last polling question so you can get your CP and run if you need to. Okay, so there's some questions here that are important. Does this work with authorized.net?
Yes.
Okay, good. Can the customer make a partial payment? Can they make a partial payment?
Right now, we don't have that set up because we don't want the customer to control your AR and your payments. We are adding that as a feature that you'll be able to enable or disable, but currently it's not there.
Can you set up a payment plan?
The account owner of Recur360 can set up the payment plan for the customer. It doesn't allow the customer to create their own payment plan because then they would be controlling your AR collections. Not the owner of your business.
Can you attach documents to the invoices that are being sent?
Well, it automatically only sends the invoice PDF. So there's nothing to say, grab this other information. We can do one-off customizations if you need additional verbiage or terms in there, or additional documents, but it's not set in that right now where it can allow you to upload things like into a Dropbox and automatically attach them.
Okay. Somebody says, can you quickly compare Invoice Sherpa with AR Connect? Do you have AR Collect? Do you have any top of mind? Of course, this is your app and you're going to promote it and yours is better, blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
Right? But any really high top of mind there?
High level, so we built this for QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online. Invoice Sherpa hasn't had an integration to QuickBooks Desktop, although they just released it recently.
Right.
So we've been operating with all of this for QuickBooks Desktop and online, where they were only focused as online.
Okay.
AR Collect is an older platform. Ours is more modern and more automated. Theirs is just for collections on AR. It's not also the recurring invoicing, and it's not recurring payments. So you're getting all of those things in our one platform, where theirs is just the collections piece. Against Invoice Sherpa, their focus really isn't so much on the recurring. It's more focused on creating more powerful invoices, I would say, than what QuickBooks can give you. Our focus is on the recurring.
Yeah, and one thing that I think is important for you to mention, because when you were demonstrating the product to me, you said that you are merchant account agnostic, and the fact that your platform is really designed to automate the payment process, not necessarily to be in the business of payments, because a lot of these apps are in the business of payments, right? They take a cut for processing credit card payments through you guys. So you guys allow anyone to bring in that. So yeah, talk about pricing to the customer and pricing to accountants, and accountants bringing in multiple customers. How does pricing work?
Sure. So if you're just an individual customer on the street and you sign up for us, we're a flat rate $59 a month. So compared to our competition, we don't charge more based on the amount of customers, the amount of transactions, the dollar value of the transactions. It's just $59 flat to use all of those things that I showed you. If you have Authorized.net or USA ePay or Elevon or Intuit Payments, then you can connect those to Recur360. Again, we don't charge any additional fees. Bill.com, Invoice Sherpa, all of the competition, if you don't use them as the processor and they allow you to use an outside processor, they charge you an additional fee for not using them. We don't. So we're less expensive than the competition. We don't charge additional fees if you don't use us as the processor, and we don't charge any additional fees based on the size, the volume, or the quantity of the transactions. If you want to use us as a processor because you're not happy with who you have, or Intuit won't approve you, let's say because you're in the travel business or alcohol, or you're with somebody like your bank that's higher, because you're using our platform, we only charge 2.5% per credit card, plus a 25-cent transaction fee. ACHs are 45 cents a transaction. And then our processing has an additional $15 a month fee, like you'd pay to anybody else. So you can just use us as a platform. You can use us as a platform and add on us as the payment processor. Either way, we're less than everybody else in the marketplace as it comes to the platform or payment processing.
Okay.
We offer.
Yeah, well, that's another question. You have hundreds or thousands of customers. I don't know how many you have, if you want to say or not. You know the industries that these customers are typically in. What if you were to say, hey, be on the lookout for these particular industries that get tons of ROI and satisfaction? Which should those be?
So I would say anything that's recurring services, bookkeeping, IT, lawn maintenance, pool service, anything where the service recurs every month. Or we get a lot of alarm companies, security monitoring, again, recurring services like that. Hosting companies, we do QuickBooks Desktop hosting. So it's monthly recurring that doesn't change unless people add or change their service.
Wasn't that the inspiration for your app, to build a recurring payments feature for your hosting company? Wasn't that kind of the inspiration?
Well, the inspiration was 2 clients came to us and said, we're spending 3 days doing all of our recurring invoicing and payments. Is there a better way? And we said, no, but if we build it for you, will you sign up? And they said, yes. So we built it in 3 months, beta tested it with them, and they were our focus. And we liked it so much that we put our company on our own software for our recurring hosting services. So we use it internally, but we built it for our QuickBooks clients because they had a need that wasn't being solved for what they needed it to do in the marketplace.
All right, so I'm an accounting professional, and I'm excited. I'm excited about the app. What's my next step? My next logical step?
Okay, so if you're a QuickBooks Online accountant, where you can list all of your clients within your QuickBooks Online account. You can sign up for Recur360 using your QBOA login. And then inside of that, you can add Recur360 as an app to each one of your QBO accounts or QuickBooks Desktop. So as I showed within our dropdown here at the top, we'll show your desktop clients as well as your QBO clients. We will charge you 20% off on the $59 a month if you're an online accountant. So you have to be in the QuickBooks Online Accountant program in order to do this. If you're not a QuickBooks Online accountant and you just say have tons of clients that could use this, then we offer, separate from the QBOA, a referral partner where we'll give you a $100 gift card for everybody you refer that signs up and references you at signing up once they've been on 6 months of paid subscription. So they get an initial trial, and then the next 6 months after they've been on it, we would pay you a $100 spiff. So you could go either one of these routes. The QBOA at the 20% off is only if, again, you sign up through QuickBooks Online Accountant through adding clients. Let me go ahead and log in here to your existing list of companies that you manage.
Is there a free trial? Is there a free trial or extended trial for accountants to try it on their own firm?
Yeah, so if you sign up right now at the beginning of the month, you get a 30-day free trial. If you contact us and say, hey, can you give me another 30 days, we're more than happy to extend that.
Okay.
So for most accounting professionals, that's not an issue. Our goal is to get you to get your clients on it to streamline what you do for them or to make their lives easier, but then still allow you to manage it. And so you can see just how quickly we can flip in between customer accounts here, where in QBO, that's a little bit of a slower process because it asks you to switch companies and you're dealing with the lag of QBO loading all of their information, not just the account that you want to go into.
Awesome. We're beyond our time. So Andrew, I'll give you a couple minutes to kind of say your last words so I can wrap it up and we can finish up. We will go ahead and email everybody the slides, the link, your contact information, or whoever in your company wants to receive additional questions. So go ahead and do your last remarks and I can wrap up the webinar.
Yeah, thanks, Hector. So again, the goal of Recur360 is really to automate what doesn't exist automation-wise in QuickBooks Desktop or online. Give you the capability to communicate with your customer at a web level without requiring you to even log into QuickBooks to do anything, and get you paid faster, not after the fact. We're agnostic to the credit card processing. We're agnostic to the size of your company or the amount of transactions. So really our goal is to enhance your QuickBooks user experience without you having to pay an arm and a leg to have these advanced features. And we don't require you to install any additional software or to utilize us as the payment processor. So we're very flexible in how you can utilize us and which modules you use. We don't charge additional tiers based on this module or for that module. So far more flexible than the competition, less expensive. And that's why we were one of the top 10 new apps of 2017 with the Intuit App Center. So thank you, everyone. You can go to our website, sign up for a free trial. You can contact us if you need to extend the trial for your own business if you want to try it out. Or if you want to give a demo. We also have a tutorials page that has YouTube videos that shows you how to sign up, how to create transactions, and how it connects with QuickBooks.
Thank you, Andrew, and I wish you the best of luck. And I'm gonna start trying it on my practice actually, because I got some recurring clients that are kind of a pain. Quick question: does this work in Canada or UK or Australia?
Yes, so we work with QuickBooks Canada, any version of QuickBooks Desktop US, and obviously QuickBooks Online. We're not in UK or Australia. So really just kind of the continental, North America.
Yep.
But we'll be expanding into those other markets as we have clients come on that need it.
Perfect.
So
Yep. So thank you so much. Go ahead, guys, check them out at Recur360.com. Great presentation, great app. No wonder you guys got top 10 on the app showdown. Thank you, Andrew. All right.
Thank
So
you. Thanks everyone for joining.
bye. So the upcoming events that we recommend, obviously, we have Michel's VCon coming up next week. Check it out, accountingvcon.com. It's 2 days, May 10th, May 11th. Michelle and forgot what her partner's name is. Sandy Smith Leva do presentations about QuickBooks apps, different things. The big conference that's coming up in June 17th to June 20th, Scaling New Heights. Check them out, woodardevents.com. Michelle and I are both going to be there. This is that we hope at least we hope that it does happen. And then QuickBooks Connect in San Jose, California, November 5th to the 7th, quickbooksconnect.com. Check out that conference. Again, we want to thank Recur360 for sponsoring this episode. We want to thank TSheets for sponsoring the webinar, #1 rated app in apps.com. Create, manage, and approve your timesheets from any device. We want to thank IArrow Workflow for supporting us the last year as a premier sponsor as well, the only workflow manager created by a QuickBooks Pro advisor, fully integrated with QuickBooks Online, and of course, Hotdog, the most popular document aggregator for QuickBooks Power users, hotdog.com. Next episode will be in 2 weeks, every other Thursday. We'll talk about recurring invoices in QuickBooks Online, similar than this week. We'll talk about the QuickBooks Online side of things, and then we'll bring in Invoice Sherpa, who also does AR management type of functions for them to demo their account. Also, I would like to welcome everybody that's still on, 300 people on. Please go to facebook.com/art of advisory and check out my new podcast. It is a podcast that's done via Facebook Live every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern. Then we record it and then we transfer it to a proper iTunes type of podcast. We talk about the transition from accounting compliance into advisory and consulting with me and Kirk Bowman, who's an expert in value pricing, and we're kind of interweave pricing in the whole area. But check it out. It's a free podcast, facebook.com/art of advisory. And I am promoting self-promotion in this case. And also, of course, check out Michel's VCon coming up next week. Join the conversation, continue the conversation, chat with your peers in our Facebook group. This is arguably one of the biggest groups in Facebook where people talk about QuickBooks related issues. Check them out. Check us out, QB Power Hour in Facebook. And if you're a sponsor looking to sponsor an episode or show, or you have any topic suggestions, email me at qbpowerhour@gmail.com and I'll take care of that. Thank you very much and have a wonderful rest of your day.